Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark, back to talk about fantasy football again. Yeah. So, I was going to get into a video that discussed a little more strategy about things, but unfortunately, there's a lot of mistakes going on out there, so I got to address those, and I'm going to be talking about the top 5 trends that I've been knowing that are just wrong in fantasy football so far this year. And I'm just going to bring that up here in this video, so that way, like, if you make these mistakes, like, you're literally going to cost yourself your season. So I'm just going to start, like, bringing this up now, and just kind of clear the air before people actually start getting into their drafts, hopefully, because there's some serious mistakes that I'm still seeing that just massively frustrate me. So anyway, let's get into it. There's going to be 5 things, and I'll get into each of them. So, the first one, let me start out with like a little story to kind of explain this first one. So, yeah. So, like, I'm in like a draft with my coworkers, and you know, like a lot of these people are people that I've like newly worked with and stuff. So they're like, oh, well, yeah, you should come join our fantasy league this year. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool. What's it like? And then they're like, oh yeah, these guys, like, they really take it seriously. Like, they really know their stuff. Like, we think you'd be like a good fit in it too. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds kind of fun. So I'm kind of like, all right, I need to bring my A game to this draft. Like, these are some people that like take this thing pretty seriously. And you know, I show up at draft like 20 minutes before or something, and then I've got the number 4 pick, which I've already talked about is like not a good place to start out because there's clearly a drop-off between Saquon, Kamara, and Christian McCaffrey. There's clear top 3 to the next one to take after that. So I'm like, all right, I got to start like planning out my draft. So, you know, the draft rolls along. I take Hopkins, which like I'm kind of happy about that. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll see what happens the rest of the way with some of these draft picks these guys are taking. So, you know, the next 2, like, they're reasonable. Like, they take David Johnson. Like, I wouldn't have done that, but, like, I understand why people would do that. And then James Conner, like, that's a reach, but, like, I understand, like, he's potentially a top 5 running back. But he's slept on. So I'm like, all right, well, these guys know what they're doing. Well, and then the next person comes up. Number 7 pick of the draft. Keep in mind you got, like, Zeke Elliott still on the board. You got Le'Veon Bell still on the board. And you got Devontae Adams still on the board. And the guy takes Patrick Mahomes. Like, are you serious, man? Why are you taking Patrick Mahomes number 7 overall? That is so stupid. I couldn't believe it. And then it just kept getting worse. Like, whoever was drafting 8 must have then panicked and been like, oh, I took Patrick Mahomes. That's who I wanted. And then he literally did the unforgivable sin that I've been complaining about the whole time. He took Aaron Rodgers at number 8. Come on, man. So you had 2 quarterbacks gone in the top 8 picks of the draft, and you still had Zeke Elliott available. You had Devontae Adams available, who's Aaron Rodgers' own receiver. You had, like, Todd Gurley available. You had Juju available. You even had Darth Helmet available. That's Antonio Brown, by the way, if you didn't watch that other video. But, like, why would you not... Like, I don't understand, like, why anybody would think that would be a good idea. So I'm just here to remind you that, like, do not draft a quarterback in the first round. There's literally no point in doing that. Like, I don't know if these guys were trying to troll, but, like, in a real draft like this, like, why would you troll in that kind of draft anyway, especially when you're competing against other people? I think these people literally just, like, they think that, like, fantasy football is just like the NBA where it's like the stars dominate fantasy football, but they don't. I mean they do, but it's like the headline quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes. They are not fantasy players. There's a difference between that. I don't understand why people don't get that, man. It's just frustrating. Like, and like, I don't know. I'm kind of going on a rant here because I think Aaron Rodgers is overrated, but that's another story. But like the people that be drafting Aaron Rodgers this high, like, you ever notice like they're the people that like you talk to them and they're like, oh, you're a Packers fan, right? It's like, yeah, go Pack, go. And then you're like, oh, well, where are you from? It's like, oh, I'm from New York City. And then that's like, oh, that's cool. Why are you a Packers fan? And it's like, oh, because of Aaron Rodgers. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like, So then you're like, well, are you a Knicks fan then? And it's like, no, I'm a Lakers fan, man. LeBron James all the way. It's just like, you know what I mean? That these are always the people that do this these are the type of people that like will be drafting Aaron Rodgers in the first round, man. I'm telling you. Like, but anyway, there are multiple reasons why you do not want to do this, but I'm just telling you, like you're sacrificing so much talent when you take these quarterbacks that high. There's just no purpose in doing that, and like you could get those guys later. It's like there's really like when you could get like a guy like Zeke Elliott, you could have gotten Aaron Rodgers at his average draft position in like the 4th or 5th round, but you're taking him at number 8 overall. It's just like, and Patrick Mahomes is going to have a good season, but that is not justified for him either to go that high. I just couldn't believe it. Like, so, I mean, and then things kind of fell into place for me the rest of the way because there's some other very questionable picks that happened in this draft. But beside the point. So, anyway, like my advice is like just don't draft a quarterback in the first round. That's my number one point. It took me 6 minutes to get through it, but it's just, I don't know why anybody thinks that'd be a good idea. I'm just trying to dispel that myth right now. And then this gets to my second point, is that when people do stuff like this, like they take 2 quarterbacks in the first 8 picks of the draft, then you do not start panicking and reaching for quarterbacks. So what do I mean by that? So let's take a look at like some of these other picks that came up. We didn't have any quarterbacks in the second round go, but then in the third round you had Baker Mayfield get drafted. You had Deshaun Watson get drafted, which I mean, those are reasonable. But then you had like Drew Brees get drafted, and it's just like why would you do that, man? So it's like people are like panicking because they lose out on Aaron Rodgers because that was the guy that they wanted as their sleeper, and then they just start making worse picks, like they take Matt Ryan in the 4th round. They take Andrew Luck in the 5th round. Like, Andrew Luck, we don't even know if he's going to play. He's like, hadn't even practiced yet. Like, why would you waste a 5th round pick on him? It's just like, I couldn't even believe this stuff. It was just like absolutely insane. And especially in like this particular league where you have like multiple flexes, like, there's no point in like reaching for a quarterback because like, at a minimum, each league is going to have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. So of all the positions that you're putting out there, like usually like 9 players are starting. Like you have to fill 6 of them from skill position players. You only fill one of those positions with a quarterback. So there's no point in reaching for a quarterback because one, you could get the same value of a quarterback later, like a guy like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Mitch Trubisky was the guy that I eventually took. And like, and then you need depth for all those positions that you're trying to fill the skill players with. So it doesn't make any sense to like start reaching for quarterbacks early because like, then you're just sacrificing even more depth. Because when you start getting into the middle of the draft, that's when you start like, the guys they're telling you to take are all the handcuffs. And you're not going to get starters out of it. So then you're scrambling trying to fill your like team with like, back-end running backs because you didn't establish depth because you spent your first round pick on Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's just like insane strategy. Like, I don't understand like why people would think that would make any difference for them, but I don't know. By the way, if you do that, I'm not like trying to like say you're a bad person or anything. I'm just saying you need to like probably rethink some things. That's my way of saying it. So let the quarterbacks fall to you at their value. You can get some pretty good ones late in the draft. I talked about some of them in my previous video, so go back and take a look at some of them. But there are some good quarterbacks out there that are not going very high. You can get all the RB and wide receiver depth that you need, and then you can play the stream game at quarterback if worse comes to worse, and you'll land on a good one. So if you look at the trends from last year, like Patrick Mahomes, like he was kind of like that too. Like he was taken generally in the middle of the draft. He ended up being better than Aaron Rodgers, who people were taking in the first round last year too. So, yeah. Anyway, so my third point is don't get too scared off from talented guys that you just don't even draft them over other players that aren't as good as them. So what do I mean by that? A lot of people are getting really scared by Melvin Gordon right now, and he fell all the way to like the end of the 4th round in a lot of these drafts. Like 4th and 5th round is what I've been seeing him. AJ Green the same way. And honestly, in that draft that I did, I took both of them because Melvin Gordon is one of those that like you have like a good. I mean, if you strategically play it right, like you get him as a 4th round value, like once he plays, like that's a top 5 running back right there. Like I would honestly like take him if you were considering Zeke also being like happy with his contract as well, then Melvin Gordon would be my number 5 overall player in this draft. But with the contract situation, it's kind of questionable whether or not he's going to play. But by the time you get to the 4th round, like those are guys that you're trying to use as potential trade pieces to get one of those top 3 round players anyway. So you're basically getting value of a guy that you would trade for at draft level in the 4th round. So I mean, once he plays, like that's incredible value that you get there. But the thing is that if you have Melvin Gordon, then you have to be strategic about it, and you have to get his handcuff, which is Justin Jackson. Austin Eckler is kind of his handcuff, but not really because he's more of that change of pace guy. Justin Jackson is more the guy you want. So, like, and I see similar trends going on with AJ Green because of his foot injury, and then Darth Helmet because of his helmet, or whatever else nonsense he's up to these days. Like, so it's just like I like don't. Like, if you get these guys, like, down in the range of the 4th round, and A.J. Green was all the way down to the 9th round in that draft. So it's like, I've already filled out all my receivers and to have extra bench players. So if you put A.J. Green, and let's say he gets healthy, like, that's a top 3 round talented player right there. So, like, don't be afraid to buy low on some of these guys that are falling like that, because that obviously have displayed a lot of elite talent in the past. So that would be my advice for that kind of stuff. So my 4th point that I've been missing, that I've been noticing that's a mistake trend, is that people will, when it comes to running backs that they're trying to fill with their depth, they reach for ones that are old and are basically past their prime, but they're doing it because the guy has hype. So what do I mean by that? So let's take a look at some of this stuff. So people went up and reached for Mark Ingram in the 5th round. Like, that is not a good pick. They took Adrian Peterson in the 9th round. That is not a good pick. And then LaShawn McCoy, I could kind of see that. But 9th round, I feel like that's still a little high for me too. But when people do that, they're not getting their handcuff that's specific to those guys. So, like, if you're going to take Adrian Peterson, for example, then, like, you want to make sure that you at least have, like, a guy like Chris Thompson or Darius Geis is usually going before Adrian Peterson, so that's why I don't include him there. But you want to have a guy that's a backup that could fill in that value for him. Or like sort of LaShawn McCoy, for example. Like, you don't know like how much gas he has left in the tank. So then you have to make sure you get a guy like Devin Singletary, who's looking pretty good this preseason, and is kind of the future of that backfield. But they don't do that either. And then these guys that are like, they're drafting these questionable players like Zeke Elliott, then they don't get Tony Pollard. It's like you have to like plan around this stuff so that way, like, when in case somebody like gets hurt or injured like that, or let's say they get like suspended or just decide not to play, which is a potential for Zeke Elliott, then you have to have that handcuff value there. Like, you can't just like that's not the time to be like reaching to take like Will Lutz or some kicker that's like mid-value, that's really not a huge upgrade over some of the guys you can get at the end of the draft. Like, so it's just like you just gotta really like understand, like, with these running backs, like, they're in pretty short supply, and you can really get a lot of value by especially like if you have some bench pieces at the end, like pick up some of these like handcuff guys that like people aren't picking up because they're not paying attention to it. And then if anything were to happen, then like you have one of these guys on your team, and then you can get incredible value out of that. So who am I talking about? So there's some good rookies to look out for that are kind of sleepers, like Darrell Henderson. He fell pretty hard in that draft. Darwin Thompson is another one on Kansas City who's pretty much falling all the way to the bottom of these drafts. But he's the guy that like is looking better than Carlos Hyde is, and Carlos Hyde is going way earlier. Devin Singletary is another one of those. You have other guys that are they're not rookies, but they're like, you know, guys that are trying to prove themselves and look like they're the future, like Rashad Penny, like Ronald Jones, like guys like that, like, but they're generally falling and people aren't really filling their handcuff positions with them. So Tony Pollard is a rookie, and that is a guy that like you want to make sure that you have anyway, because let's say like if Zeke Elliott doesn't actually sign his contract, which it's kind of not really looking like he's going to do that anytime soon. So you can have this guy in week 1, and then you trade him, and then you can get good value because maybe you can convince somebody that like, oh, well, Zeke Elliott's not going to play this season. Look at Le'Veon Bell from last year. And you can get good value for that. And it's a guy that you're getting at the end of the draft. Like, you have so much value in these running backs if you stash them at the end. But a lot of people are like kind of going for these older guys that like, they have a lot of value right now, but then once the season starts and you actually start seeing how they play, it's like you realize like that's not going to work. So, yeah. And then my last point that I want to bring up is just the overall like, kind of building off of number 4, but just the overall like not strategically putting your roster together well. Like there's people taking like 3 quarterbacks, like drafting 2 defenses. You don't need to do that. I'm just telling you, like, you can get on your roster, and this is like from one of my first video that I made. You only need 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, 1 defense, and 1 kicker. Like, and you could start all of them, but you want to make sure that like you're getting depth at running back and receiver, because those are the positions that get injured the most. Like those are the ones that like you really want to make sure that you have a lot of depth for. Especially if you have that running back like depth, then that you could really give yourself a lot of leeway in trades. Like, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but let's say that like, so like on that team I had Mitch Trubisky, and not a great quarterback, but he's average, but I got him at the end of the draft. So let's say he starts off well, and they're playing the Packers, so that's possible. So let's say I take him, and then another running back I had was James White, who I'm kind of iffy on, but he kind of fell, and I kind of like that value in PPR. But I wouldn't want James White long term. So what I could do is I could then like, let's say I take, let's say like for some reason or another, and I doubt this is going to happen, but like let's say that a guy like Deshaun Watson like struggles against New Orleans, throws a lot of interceptions or something like that, or Baker Mayfield, which is like he's playing the Titans, which is good defense. Then maybe I could convince somebody like, hey, like I'll give you Mitch Trubisky and James White for Deshaun Watson. And I would do that because you're getting an easily better quarterback. And I mean, yes, you're giving up James White, which is a decent running back, but if you could significantly upgrade your quarterback like that, you can use some of that running back depth to your advantage. Like James White might be a little bit of a stretch, but let's say Darrell Henderson or something like that, who starts off in place of Todd Gurley. Then you can make trades like that, and it'll really help your team. But you can't do that if you have like a couple quarterbacks on your team, because you're not going to have the skill position depth in order to give you any trade leverage for anything. So that's why you want to stock up on running backs and receivers, is so that you can manage this stuff. And yeah, I'm just saying, like, these are some trends that I've been noticing, and I think that there's some significant problems in them, especially the first 2. Like, quarterbacks, yes, they're like the most media hyped position in football, but we're talking about fantasy football here, and it doesn't have anything to do with that. Well, I think I just lost my voice talking about Aaron Rodgers, but oh well. But anyway, so feel free to comment and let me know what you think. I'm doing this because I'm trying to save your season before your draft. You only have a few days to watch this, so I'm trying to do my best to make sure that you don't fall into these pitfalls, because I'm telling you, like, this could, like, if you make these mistakes, it could really cost you your season. So, anyway. But yeah, feel free to comment and let me know what you think, and I'll try to answer any questions and try to help you out. So, thanks guys. See ya. Bye.